Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 9, Episode 111. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for tuning in to us, Steelers Nation, on this Wednesday. Again, doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then for next week, we'll go back with our usual two-a-day schedule. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing great on this Wednesday. I actually know what day it is, so I've made some improvement there. Boy, it sure seemed like a lot of the days were kind of running together there. Seemed like we were doing a podcast. My wife even joked last night. You should get up and do a podcast in the morning. I said, well, I am. She didn't know that we had kind of switched the schedule up and all. That'll fix her for trying to pay too much close mind to my business.
Hey, it's new month, new us. So happy May to you, Steelers Nation. But we're going to start today. We're going to go through some of the draft picks we haven't talked as in depth about a little bit later in the show, Dave. I know you've watched Sutton Smith quite a bit over the last day or so, but I want to start with two guys that are currently on the roster, non-draft picks. That one guy I think would certainly be one of the winners of this draft based on the way the Steelers went with their direction, and one guy that I know people want to push out the door, but probably shouldn't just yet. But I'll start with the former of the two, with Marcus Allen. And I know, Dave, on Monday's show, we talked briefly about Marcus Allen and him, again, kind of being a winner of this draft, being involved in that, dime potential mix. But I think you have the quote up about Tomlin basically confirming that he's going to play that linebacker, dimebacker spot that, currently seems unfilled, wasn't addressed in the draft. They released Morgan Burnett, and certainly Allen seems to be the most logical man to man that spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we went over a lot of what Tomlin and Kevin Colbert said during their wrap-up press conference the other day, but I don't think we paid this enough mind or due, if you will, in going over the exact quote. So, he was asked regarding Devin Bush, do you feel like you did a nice job addressing some package football? Were you able to do it in the way maybe you hoped to? And, I think a lot of this also stemmed from, the Steelers not drafting a quote-unquote, safety, if you will. But Mike Tomlin addressed that the other day in the wrap-up press conference. He says, I feel good about the men that we have selected. I'm not opposed to exploring guys that are currently on our roster in the expansion of roles and the development of people in that area. I know that we have spent a lot of time grooming and talking about the development of Marcus Allen as a guy that is going into his second year that should be able to compete for a linebacker position. So it's not only these men, but also the development of guys that have been in our program that makes us feel good about the direction of that overall subject. So, there it is, kind of, in hard, print for you. It sounds like to me that Marcus Allen is going to be given an opportunity to, compete for a dimebacker role, I guess.
And that was always expected, I think, regardless of what the Steelers did in the draft. Even if they had taken somebody like, let's say, Darnell Savage in the first round, or your guy Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I think Allen would have been in the mix there, and I was okay with that. But I am surprised to see, because it feels like they're putting all their eggs in the Marcus Allen basket. Like, if not Marcus Allen, then who? And I don't know who else could be. I mean, I know that, people could mention Jordan Dangerfield. I know we could talk about a guy, PJ Locke, that they just signed, that kind of profiles as that type. But that's, Dangerfield has never been in that spot before. Locke's a UDFA. He's got to make the team first. So it really feels like Marcus Allen or bust. I mean, are there any other options that they could go with from guys on the roster outside of Allen?
We talked a little bit about Mark Barron, but at his age, how much, he's a former safety, obviously, but, he has done some coverage in the past, but is he really is he a guy that potentially could play that role?
That was my initial impression whenever he was first signed, but the more I watched the tape, and I think you'd agree, Dave, that he wasn't used in that role recently, and I don't think he has the skill set to succeed in that role. I think he is truly a MAC linebacker and not that dimebacker position.
Yeah, I don't know. How much you're going to expect him to run with tight ends, let's say, or slot receivers. Obviously he's up there in age a little bit as well too. Now, is he a better Is Mark Barron a better option than Morgan Burnett was?
They're probably equally. It's like when you go to the eye doctor and he's telling you one or two, and they're just both terrible, and you're just trying to figure out which one doesn't get you the big glasses. I mean, they're both bad. I guess I would go Burnett because, again, I think it's important to have that. I know that Barron was a former safety, but Burnett has played that safety role, more recently, and you've been comfortable in space and moved all around. But Barron's the only guy that's playing between the tackles. Yes, he'll kick out a little bit against a running back. Maybe he can flex out against, but he's not playing over the slot. I think he struggles against tight ends, and he just isn't playing in that space. So I don't see Barron being an ideal fit for that role.
Well, last year they had Burry,
I know.
some in that role. Obviously, don't want to see that again. How does it's been a while since we talked about Marcus Allen. I mean, how is he in the short area and running with players?
I mean, again, we don't know a whole lot about Marcus Allen because he played, 17 defensive snaps that last year? I mean, we didn't learn a whole lot about him last year. And the game that he did play was the Chargers contest where, again, I think I referenced this on Monday's podcast, Tomlin's infamous ran out of smoke kind of game, which wasn't exactly a praise of Allen and what they thought of him and what he could do. So we're going to find that out. Obviously, the team is very high on Marcus Allen. Clearly, they saw something they liked to give him the confidence to feel like he's the guy, the leader in the clubhouse going forward. I guess it's also possible they just played less dime this year because they did really expand that package to playing not only on 3rd and long, 3rd and 5+, whenever they did that in 2015, 2016, 2017. They were playing dime really just in obvious pass situations in 2-minute drills. Last year, they really expanded it to playing it on early downs against 1st and 10. So I think it is possible with the speed they've added at inside linebacker with Mark Barron, with Devin Bush, that they could just play more nickel in conventional situations and then go to their dime package on 3rd and 5+, thereby reducing the amount of dime snaps overall. I guess that's a possibility too if you want to help maybe mitigate some of the lack of options you have there.
Sure, and the sooner that Bush gets on the field, the quicker you could probably do something like that, right?
Yeah, or even just Barron, because, this is a faster linebacking core, and I think probably one reason why they played so much time last year, including on early downs, was they just feel like they didn't have enough speed, even on early downs, to compete against tight ends and receivers and running backs. So maybe that was one reason why, and now they're going to kind of scale back that dime package a little bit, and again, use it the way that they were in the beginning, where it's 3rd and 5+ and 2-minute and late game stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be something to watch, and I thought the follow-up quote that Tomlin had, really to him talking about Marcus Allen and potentially shifting to a linebacker spot. He was asked, since you brought up Marcus Allen, their safety was not drafted. How do you feel about your numbers there? Could Allen go over there? Sean Davis is coming into his last year, just wondering about the numbers at safety. And Mike Tomlin said, we'll allow those guys to sort themselves out. We're comfortable with the number of people that we have working. We're also comfortable with the versatility of some of the corners. You've seen Cam Sutton play some safety. You've seen Mike Hilton play safety on our football team in the past. I'm sure there are others who are capable as well. So we're comfortable not only with the numbers, but with the flexibility of others that may not be quote unquote safety. So what did you make of that? Cameron Sutton feels like he can make a move to free safety.
It feels like they don't know what to do with Cam Sutton.
Right.
What has his role been since he's come into the league? He's been a slot guy. He's been an outside guy. He's played a little bit of safety in some practices in camp, and I don't think they really have a good plan or a good feel for where he works best and where they want him and where they need him. It could be. I know Tomlin seemed to throw a lot of stuff out there. We've only seen Hilton and Sutton play in camp. I don't think they've ever played. Correct me if I'm wrong. They've ever played safety even in a preseason game, right?
Not that I remember.
So I know they've done a little bit in training camp before we noted that last year, in last August. But yeah, not only does the dimebacker spot worry me to some degree, but just the overall safety depth. Really you need, I think, 4 safeties general in your roster. You have your 2 starters, your dime guy, and then at least 1 backup because someone's getting hurt. They're not all making it through this game. 16 games, 1,000 snaps. Someone's going to go down. So not only does that dimebacker spot worry me a bit, just the lack of depth overall at safety seems to be a bit of a concern, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it seems like that might be a position you kind of watch. We talked about tight end the other day. maybe watching just to see if anybody gets cut or if anybody, look, I mean, they acquired, who was it?
J.J. Wilcox.
Yeah, well, Wilcox and Vance McDonald right before seasons got underway and all. Now, I obviously, the longer you have those players with you, the more ideal it is. But I suppose that should be or could be something that they look for. And hey, I don't know about you, and I guess it's a good time maybe to quickly segue into it. And you just mentioned it briefly there, but with a guy like P.J. Locke, I mean. I was excited. That might be the best undrafted guy that they're going to sign this year, judging by the early list, is P.J. Locke, because I mean he's not afraid to hit. He does have some decent measurables. Now, obviously, I think his tackling leaves or his form tackling leaves a lot to be desired there. But this is a guy that go back and look at some of the stuff he did at Texas. Maybe this is a guy that could potentially project as a dimebacker.
Yeah, I think you could fit that role, but it's hard to count on any particular UDFA.
Oh, sure. But I mean, this is a guy that at least fits the model.
Sure. Sure, but that illustrates kind of the lack of depth and the concern. Whenever your options are a fifth round pick from last year, played 17 snaps, and a UDFA who just signed 2 days ago, those feel like your top two options right now, and that gives me a little cause for concern. Yeah,
I mean, this is one thing I think we're going to be talking about for quite a while, the dimebacker role. And I'm not. You would think that Marcus Allen's spot on the 53-man roster, is fairly safe, wouldn't you?
Seems almost. I won't call him a lock, but almost close to, considering the way Tomlin's braced him and the lack of other options. I mean, it seems like he's the guy.
Right. I mean, and you have Edmonds, you have Sean Davis, and then really you have Allen and what
Danger.
else?
Danger, I think,
Yeah,
like
but I mean,
Danger.
look, I know every year we write him off, and then he shows up. Hey guys, how you doing?
Right. Wouldn't it have been better though, Dave? And I don't like being this guy and going back to, well, they should have taken X player. But if you draft not even Darnell Savage in the first, because obviously you trained up for Devin Bush, I get all that. But let's say you're taking a Monty Hooker or again Gardner Johnson, late day 3, and then you have Allen and the rookie, and you have safety depth, you have options. I mean, for a team that predicated their draft so much on versatility and flexibility, they feel like they really ignored a spot that really would have created a lot of flexibility and versatility for them in that dime role and that extra safety spot.
Well, that's why obviously Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert got a lot of questions, about not addressing that position. Now, when did Hooker go?
I think on day 3. I don't know if he circled back to the Steelers 122 when they took Snell. I can look it up. I know Chauncey Gardner went before the Steelers picked in round 4. Hooker went 116, so he went before Benny Snell's pick.
So he went after the Steelers, but after the Steelers chose Justin Lane, but before they picked Benny Snell.
Correct.
And Hooker went and all right. Now let's look at the guys that were taken after Benny Snell was drafted, but before Zach Gentry was drafted there. You got guys like, I guess, Deontay Thompson. I'm trying to see. Our buddy Ugo Amadi.
Yeah, that's a good one. Ugo Amadi. Amon Marshall, I know played corner at USC, but I think most project him to be a safety. He went 127 to Baltimore. Deontay Thompson. Marvell Tell III. Athletic guy. Some project him actually to move to corner, but he was a sparky guy that would have fit.
Could you have gotten Benny Snell? Do you think you could have gotten Benny Snell in round 5?
I thought it was possible, but I don't know. I mean, we're playing a guessing game at that point. I will say though, two really good dime options went off the board, 5 picks ahead of Pittsburgh. Hooker at 116 and then Redwine at 119. So maybe they just didn't have their guy anymore.
That's quite possible as well. So and look, I mean, you can't fault them for taking the corner. I guess where a lot of people are going to have issue here is why didn't they try to maybe move up, package, one of their picks in and move up to get that kind of player.
Yeah, I mean, I get that all the time on my timeline, but you can only go up so far on day 3 when you have a bunch of 6-round picks. They're not going to really create a lot of movement for you. I don't want to influence my concerns over Justin Lane too much here, but I'm looking at 83 and saying, instead of going with a corner when you sign Steven Nelson and you have some depth with Cam Sutton, why not go with the dime guy at 83 instead of the corner?
Yeah, I understand that. But I mean, we knew without a doubt that they were probably going to address a corner at some point.
Sure. Oh, I understand that. I mean, I'm not shocked by it, but if from my standpoint, what would GM Alex Kozora do? That's kind of where I'm leaning, is to address that dime spot with the second pick in the third round.
Well, I mean, all we can do now is kind of sit and watch and see what happens with Lane.
Yeah. I mean, if it turns out to be a great pick, then hey, that's awesome, fantastic.
Right, and then Benny Snell. Like it or not, and we'll talk a little bit more about Benny Snell later in the show again today, but. It was more of a luxury pick. I view it as that. I mean, yeah, James Conner hasn't been the picture of health lately, and Jalen Samuels kind of is what he is. I mean, this was a guy that really wasn't a full-time running back at North Carolina State. Was moved around quite a bit. Now he did fare well in his limited action when pressed into action last year for the Steelers, but even so, Benny Snell is kind of more. I view him more of a little bit of as a luxury pick there in the fourth round.
Yeah, or even Zach Gentry in the fifth. You want to talk about guys you could probably get later in the draft? Again, I know it's a dangerous game to play, but did you need Zach Gentry in the fifth? I think you could have snagged him with one of your 6-rounders.
Possible. Some people are trying to say he might have went undrafted. I'm not sure about that.
I thought he was going to go undrafted. I mean,
a guy with his size, and I mean, he made some catches. I mean, he's got some decent catch radius and all. And we've already kind of talked a little bit about him. But I mean, heck, you had guys like, I mean, even if you had waited, I know they had brought Elise back in for a visit, and I think he went somewhere in the 7th round there. And what other tight ends? Isaac Nuada, more of a blocking tight end out of Georgia.
Oh, yeah, blocking H-back type.
And heck, Caleb Wilson, a guy that I wasn't overly impressed on film based on where people were kind of slotting him out of UCLA. Now obviously he needs a lot of work on his blocking skills, probably more than Zach Gentry does. But Caleb Wilson ended up being Mr. Irrelevant this year.
Yeah, or even Caden Smith from Stanford, a big tight end that can block. I mean, you take him instead of Sutton Smith in the 6th round.
Yeah, now look, make no mistake about it. I think they liked, they definitely, and I think Kevin Colbert has since said as much. They really strive to go after character guys, after altar boys this year, and guys with probably a little bit more upside than they're coming out of college with. And Lane and Gentry are two guys that Kevin Colbert has since talked about on, I think it was on Sirius Radio, that he talked about both those guys and talking about, hey, these are two guys that went to college at different positions and exited at a different positions there. So these are guys that we think have a little bit of upside to them. So I get that. But you can definitely, those are two, guys like Gentry, you can circle for sure, wondering, and, potentially a guy like Snell because of where he was drafted and it being viewed more as a luxury pick.
I think that's still less of a luxury pick, because I think that number 3 running back is important because he's gonna play this year. Someone's getting hurt between Conner with his history and Samuels, who's never been the guy. So eventually Snell's going to become that number 2, right?
You would think, you would hope where he's drafted. I mean, right now with Benny Snell, where he was drafted, you would think at some point he's going to see the field as the main relief for James Conner.
Yeah, or not even. I think he's going to open as a number 3 this year, but someone's going down. Even for a game or a month or a season, who knows? Hopefully, it's only a game, but someone's going down. That's going to elevate Snell to that number 2 spot. So I saw it as a bit of a less of a luxury. To go to Gentry for a moment, I do want to mention the Corbett's comments on the Gentry pick, because I know we've kind of been really critical of it, but I think it's fair to talk about what made Gentry attractive, and there certainly are things in Gentry's game that made him an attractive pick to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This was Colbert talking. When was he talking the other day on Sirius? Yeah,
right.
with Pat Kerwin, which is a great interview, and Pat Kerwin always does a great job. But mentioning the Gentry pick and why they took him, Colbert says, quote, "He was very impressive. He's smart. He's still learning, but he has the prototypical Y-type tight end body. They're few and far between. When we took Jesse James a few years back, Jesse was one of the guys who could fit that mold and play that Y. Because in today's college game, a lot of tight ends are the 6'3", 240 guys who play in the slot because they block on perimeter passes. But few guys play attached as tight ends. At the University of Michigan, Zach did," end quote. And that's absolutely true. I mean, Gentry's a guy that has experience playing inline, playing in a three-point stance. Yes, he's still raw, but, if you took a guy that was raw and didn't have that experience, you'd be facing an even tougher uphill battle. So I understand why they took Gentry, because he did, on paper and in usage, fit the mold of what Steelers look for in the position.
Yeah, absolutely. And they like that all-around tight end because they like to have two tight ends on the field, especially for in the running game at times in that offense. So the kind of tight end, they weren't just going to get one that only who was the kid out of Ole Miss last year, or was it last year or the year before?
Evan Ingram?
Who mostly you could use more as a wide receiver. You knew that they were wanting a more well-rounded tight end as usual, and when you waited as late as you waited there, you could see why Gentry would fit the bill and why they think maybe he's got a little upside to him. Now, I still have not made a deep dive into his blocking yet, but I mean, from the surface view of it, it needs a lot of work still. So, and that kind of, I still wouldn't be surprised at any point. I mean, is Xavier Grimble going to be your number 2 to open up the season? I suppose it's possible, and at least the thing, the main thing with Xavier Grimble, for the money he's making, he better open the season as your number 2. If there's any doubt that a guy like Gentry's rivaling him for a spot, then you just probably need to just cut bait with Xavier Grimble there. And also, if a better option comes along later during the offseason, that can also block and serve more as a number 2 blocking tight end than let's say a receiving tight end, I think they should jump on that as well.
I think Grimble is basically a lock to be the number 2 tight end, and the only way that he isn't is A, as you said, if they bring somebody else in, which I might start to recommend doing, or B, if McDonald gets hurt and Grimble becomes the number 1, which, circle back to the first point, they were to bring somebody in. I think Grimble's got that spot locked up. So you talk about who are the winners of this draft of guys that were already on the roster coming into draft weekend. To me, the top 2 are Marcus Allen and Xavier Grimble.
Yeah, it'd be hard to deny that right now. Absolutely.
Because Grimble's number 2. I don't think Gentry's going to push him. I think he's too raw right now. He's going to hit that blocking sled on day 1, and everyone's going to notice how big of a climb this guy has to make, which he could do.
And in Grimble's defense, now I know. Look, I mean, once that guy gets the scarlet letter on him like he had last year against, you kind of go back to Fitzgerald Toussaint in that, fan base. Boy, as soon as Toussaint fumbled in that playoff game against Denver, they washed their hands with him. I kind of get the same feeling with Grimble in that fumble. Funny how both those fumbles come against. Don't
play the Broncos. If you're a backup player, sit that one out.
Yeah, I guess the Broncos there, but I kind of get the feeling from the fan base they're ready for Grimble to hit the highway as well too after that fumble last year. But in defense of him, he has made strides in his overall game. However, he is at a ceiling now, I firmly believe, both as a blocker and as a route runner and pass catcher. But there's a little something at least to work with there, and that's something that's there should be enough to hold off Gentry. At least. Now, as far as the someone else coming in off the street, well, that's a different story. Depends on the person.
Yeah, I think Grimble really made strides as a blocker last year, and I tend to agree that he's close to his ceiling, but he is a very inconsistent player. So I think, I don't think he's going to get better as a player, but I think he can and needs to get more consistent as a player. That's always been the frustrating part with me and Xavier Grimble, is that the talent has been there. This dude looks good, getting off the bus. He's an athletic guy. He's capable of making some big-time plays. We've seen it, but it's so far and few between. I know the snap counts haven't always been there. That probably hasn't helped him, but he's got to be a more trustworthy and reliable player, both in practice and both in games, and that's been the issue and the point of contention for several years now with Xavier Grimble.
How does the whole season, and I hate to play in Mike Tomlin hypotheticals, dealing in hypotheticals here, but how much does the entire Grimble's outlook and the Steelers' 2018 season change maybe if Grimble scores on that play?
Yeah.
I mean, how big a turning point was that, I guess, you know?
I mean, you can go down that rabbit hole for a lot of games.
I mean, yeah, I realize that, but I mean, if you were to just use that as your one black hole, you know, rabbit hole escape hatch or focal point, I mean, that was a huge turning point, you know, in not only that game but perhaps the season.
Yeah, I'm not going to fight you about that.
I mean, what's a perception of Grimble if he scores there and doesn't turn that football over, you know?
Hey, he's number 2. He's awesome. We're happy.
Right. Now, of course he was wide open, you know, on the play and on a well-designed play. I mean, that it's a shame he fumbled, you know, absolutely. But anyway, back to let's back up here and how did we get to where we were? We were talking about Gentry, I guess.
Rabbit hole.
Yeah. I don't even know how we can climb out of this at this point.
Well, I'll reset it because I want to go in the other direction I mentioned at the top of the show with Tyler Matakevich. You know, we talk about Grimble as being a winner of the draft and Marcus Allen being a winner of the draft. I'm sure many will see Tyler Matakevich as kind of a loser of the draft. We know that John Bostic was a loser of the draft getting cut, you know, before these guys even came into Pittsburgh. But I wrote the article today, Dave, and I know that I've gotten a lot of comments, and that's partially why I wrote the article about, you know, they're going to move on from Dirty Grad, he's going to be cut or he should be cut, you know, he's going to push out the door. I think he should stay, and I think he will stay because, yes, while you don't want Matakevich within 50 feet of an NFL defense, what he provides to you on special teams, that value is so high that I really have a tough time seeing, you know, rookies Sutton Smith or Gilbert III coming in and taking that role out of the gate. I think that Matakevich is a four-face guy. This is a guy that leads the Steelers in special teams tackles the last 3 years, and it's not even close. He's got 29 of them the last 3 seasons. The next closest guy has 17. So this is a guy that Steeler fans should want to keep on their roster, and I think he will make it. I think his job is – I won't call him a lock because I don't call any third stringer a lock, but I think his spot's pretty safe.
Yes, from that aspect, as a 50, you know, we talked about guys like before the draft, that Van Ginkel and all like that, guys that potentially could be your 53rd guy on the roster. Well, now that you know, to me, it's Matakevich is number 53 or bust in that role because, look, I mean, you're right. I mean, if you don't want him. You don't want him on the defensive side of the football, I don't think. Not in today's NFL. But the thing is can he be that guy that, you know, we've talked about Darius Hayward-Bay kind of on the offensive side of the ball in the past this way. Is he the guy that Danny Smith's pounding the table for that he can't live without? And I mean, let's face it, Darius Hayward-Bay really, you know, outside of running deep and maybe taking the lid off of a coverage a couple plays a game, you had him on that team because of his special teams ability and him, you know, knowing situations in special teams and all like that. I mean, he wasn't there. You could have ripped the wide receiver position off of his name and just put ST next to it and been just fine. So I think, you know, one good thing I guess for Dirty Red is you don't have a Darius Hayward-Bay to compete with as a number 53 guy. So you know. He has to make himself that guy that Danny Smith is pounding the table for. That's his only way, and he's good at it. I mean, without a doubt. And your stats, you know, bear that out most definitely. But he's got to be that guy because to me, you might as well rip the linebacker designation off of his name.
Sure, he already is that guy. I think Danny Smith is already going to pound the table for him. I think, you know, Matakevich's play has proven that and created that case. You need great starters, you need quality backups, but you also need 1 to 2 to 3 awesome special teamers, and that's where Matakevich falls into that last spot. To go back to the stats,
and remember, you lost Fort too. You know,
lost Fort.
Fort was a decent special teamer. Vince Williams, how much more special teams are you going to get Vince Williams to play at this point in his career? Probably not as much. I mean, Vince is, when he's been out there in the past, has been a good special teamers, but at this point of his career and him being obviously, you know, a guy that's going to see a lot of starting snaps, he's probably not going to be out there for you. Now you do have a guy coming in Devin Bush, but I have a feeling that Devin Bush is going to go from special teamer to possibly being out there with that starting defense sooner rather than later. When that happens, how much do you want him running up and down the field on special teams? Mark Barron at this point in his career is not going to play special teams for you, correct?
Yeah, I don't know his whole resume, but I'd be pretty surprised if he was.
I mean,
he could, I guess.
Who of the inside linebackers is likely going to be playing special teams for you this year?
Well, I still think Bush will, even if he gets a role on defense. Then
let me tell you, once you get him, if you can get him acclimated to a good amount of snaps on defense, I'm not sure you want Bush out there.
Well, I agree, but how many snaps on special teams did Terrell Edmonds play last year? He played a ton. He played the wing spot on punting. How about T.J. Watt playing left tackle on punt coverage in his rookie year? And they took him off this past year, which was good. But so, I mean, the history there says that they're going to keep those guys in those roles. I think it's a bad idea because I think it's a little bit of an overload. But I think look at Watt and Edmonds, their snap counts their rookie year.
Okay. Well, even so, are you going to make Bush 4-phase?
No, I'm not saying that, but 1 to 2 face guy.
Okay.
He might be running down
punts.
Right.
But who else at linebacker?
Yeah, I mean, well, if Vince reduces his role, then potentially, he could go back to that. They've removed him from a lot of coverage stuff, a lot of special teams work because he's been the starter. But if he does lose a role, then sure. But again, point taken. I mean, that's why Matakevich is supposed to be on this team, supposed to play, get a helmet on game day because he is a 4-phase do-it-all guy. And to go back to the stat I posted on the article, I mentioned that he leads the team in tackles on special teams the last 3 years with 29. If you apply that to the entire NFL, he's tied for second in tackles with Nate Ebner. And the only guy ahead of them is Michael Thomas, who Steelers tried to sign last year and unfortunately weren't able to do so. I think he went to the Giants. So this is a guy that not only on his own team is an elite guy in terms of production, but you look at it, the entire league, he's an elite guy when you look at his production.
Yeah, and he's going to have to make himself uncuttable once again.
Yeah, and I think he will because, it's hard to envision all the 6th-round picks making it. I think Buggs is going to make it just based on roster construction, but is that going to mean that Smith and Gilbert III are both going to make it? Can they both prove more than what Matakevich has already done? That's a tough sell for me.
Sure it is.
And they could even, in theory, keep 10 linebackers. I mean, probably not. They're going to keep 9.
Well, I guess too. When you talk about Ulysses, right? I mean, is he and perhaps Matakevich battling for a 53 spot?
Well, I think it's Smith and Gilbert battling for a 53 spot. I don't put Matakevich in that battle unless these guys really prove something first. That's not how I'm going to start with it.
Okay, all right. Well,
because I mean, why wouldn't Sutton Smith battle for a spot? I mean, unless because.
No, definitely Sutton Smith. We know Sutton Smith's definitely battling for a spot.
Yeah, and so I mean I know that you're comparing the inside guys with the outside guys. Right. But to me, they're all special teamers. I mean, they're all lumping together who's going to make their mark on special teams. So I put the designation aside for a second, like you sort of rip that label off for the moment and just consider who are the best special teams guys. And Matakevich is an elite player, and it's going to be tough for Smith and Gilbert. They might flash. I mean, I think they have the skill sets to be good special teamers, but to do it day one and be a 4-phase guy day one for a 6th-round rookie, it's a tough sell.
It's not unthinkable to have Gilbert, Sutton Smith, and let's say Gray, the 7th-round pick, all not make the 53-man roster.
Yeah, it's not unthinkable. I think one of Smith or Gilbert will make it because if you choose one of those names and you keep Matakevich, you got 9 guys, assuming you keep someone like a Denier, and obviously Chick's going to make it. So, they're going to keep 9 linebackers. That's generally how they go. And so if you have Smith, Gilbert, and Matakevich, that's 10. So get rid of one of those names, to me, one of the 6th-round picks, put them on the practice squad, and you're at 9, and you're good to go.
All right, wrapping up kind of what Kevin Colbert said on Sirius before we kind of change the route here. He also talked about Justin Lee. He talked about all the draft picks. We'll probably be writing a little bit more about maybe what he said about a few of the other ones, but we kind of so far have focused in on what he had to say about Gentry and Justin Lane. He says, we think he's still on the rise, only having been at a corner really for 2 years as a starter. Colbert Colbert said of Lane. And he does have length. He does have speed. He understands what receivers are doing because, like you said, and all this was precipitated by Jim Miller, who, of course, is a Michigan State alumni on Sirius, referencing the whole Tony Lippett thing. And for those of you that don't remember the Tony Lippett story, he was he come out of Michigan State as a wide receiver. I think he showed up at Michigan State as a corner, then flipped, or as a wide receiver and quickly flipped the corner, then back to wide receiver. Well, Tony Lippett even finished his career at Michigan State as the Big Ten leader in receiving yards. A lot of people probably don't remember that. He went on to be a 5th round draft pick in the 2000 NFL draft of the Miami Dolphins, and they drafted him as a corner right away. And he kind of had similar measurables to Justin Lane. Now, Lane obviously was a little bit better from the combine aspect and everything involved. In fact, Lane exits college a little bit younger than Lippett when he came out. But anyway, that sets up Colbert's comments there. He goes on to say, in reference to Lippett, he's playing that position. So sometimes when a corner's reading a route, he knows what the route is and what the receiver's thinking. And, Michigan State still use them some in packages, running a couple of deep routes and comebacks and things of that nature. So he knows how to play. But he has ball skills as well. So we don't think we've seen the best of him, quite honestly. We think he's still on the rise, and that's exciting because he certainly has the length and the speed and the attitude. Now, with all that said and being on the rise, it's hard to imagine Lane seeing the field defensively any during his rookie season, barring the injury, of course.
Yeah, you'd think, as being a raw guy, that would be the direction that they go. But we'll see exactly. If an injury happens, what if Steven Nelson, Joe Hayden goes down? Hayden's had a couple injuries in his brief Steelers career. Who's going to be next man up? Is it going to be Cam Sutton? Are they going to have him finally? But if they're going to move Sutton to safety, then who knows? And Brian Allen, I guess, is kind of on the back burner right now. So it's possible that Lane plays year one. I mean, I guess most of these guys are just one injury away from seeing significant snaps.
Sure, and I guess it all is going to depend on what happens with Artie Burns the rest of the summer, and that's another guy that Colbert talked about on the radio on 93.7 The Fan yesterday when asked about Artie Burns, and really, I thought Colbert was as truthful could be. He was asked, in essence, what the team's future plans are with Burns following him having a disappointing 2018 season. And then, of course, you throw on top of it the drafting of Justin Lane in the 3rd round. Well, Colbert said, look, that's up to Artie. He says Artie came in as a rookie and played pretty good for us the first year, and over the last 2 years he hasn't. And it's really a confidence issue with Artie. Artie lost his confidence and wasn't where we needed him to be, and was replaced in the starting lineup. Of course, that replacing started around week 5, week 6 last year. And the bad thing about it is they gave Artie a chance later on in the season. I think due to injury or Hayden. I forget how it happened. Was it the game against Carolina late? I don't remember. Maybe it was in that blowout game against Carolina. They put Artie late in that game and gave him a few more snaps, and he didn't play. Didn't play well in that, and then obviously didn't see the field defensively the rest of the year. Kevin Colbert goes on to say he's had a good offseason. He's only been with us for the last week and a half in the phase of the workouts we're in, but we had a good meeting with him. He wants to be back where he was. He certainly has the talent to be, and he works at it. He's just got to find that confidence again, and if he does, he can be a successful NFL starter. But he knows it, we know it, and it's been talked about, and we're encouraged by his wanting to be back where he needs to be. And if he gets there, great. That'll be good for him. It'll be good for us, and we're going to support that and see where it goes. So, obviously, too, the thing, and it's not really a huge deal when you consider what savings it would present if it happened. Artie Burns is due a $800,000 roster bonus a couple of days into the start of training camp. I mean, if you know for a fact that he's not savable entering training camp, then you cut him before training camp. Because there's no sense with the salary he's making, and then that bonus, you risk him getting hurt. If you know without a shadow of a doubt that Artie Burns in no way, shape, or form can make your roster before you report to Latrobe, then you either try to trade him or you cut him.
Or, as I mentioned before, he has to move that roster bonus back to September 1st. I assume they've asked Boswell to move his roster bonus back to sometime right around the start of the season. So that would be kind of the...
Yeah, but I'm not even so concerned about the roster bonus as I am, maybe getting stuck with that base salary and all,
Yeah,
which isn't overly much, but I mean, if look, you're talking about a former first-round draft pick here, and it could, you're not going to pick up his fifth-year option, so that means 2019 is going to be his final season under contract. But heck, you've seen teams be able to trade for guys like Marcus Gilbert. Now, obviously, Marcus Gilbert had a better track record than Marcus Gilbert's deal was. Can you get him back on the field, to see that talent? I mean, would a team be willing to give up a 6th or a 7th draft pick to take on Artie Burns for one final season? I don't know. I mean, based on Artie's recent history, you would say probably not. But my view is you better go ahead and plan on Artie Burns being in training camp, because the only way he's not, I think, is if you just know beyond a shadow of a doubt that he's just lost it and not going to get it back.
Just a really strange career for Artie Burns. I mean, for a guy that was as raw as he was coming out of the U, his best year came his rookie season when this was a zone defense. And I still remember, clear as day, his quote when they drafted him saying basically we have to teach him how to play zone. Yet his best year was as a rookie in his zone coverage. And now that the Steelers have evolved into a more man-heavy team, he's gotten worse. I mean, as the defense has played to his supposed strengths, and as he's gotten more experience, he's struggled more. I mean, that's Twilight Zone stuff to me, and it speaks to just the mental aspect and the lack of confidence that he has in his game, and not trusting his technique, not trusting what he sees right now. But it is crazy that he started off at a decent place in a probably arguably poor scheme fit, and as the scheme fit has matched his skill set, he's regressed.
Do you think he opens up the 2019 season for the Steelers as the next guy off the bench?
I think he opens it up on the street. I don't think he's making the team.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't done a roster construction yet, but you got Hayden, Nelson, Lane, Locks, Hilton, Sutton, close to Locks, if not Locks. That's 5. Then you got Brian Allen, whatever other guys compete for that spot. Herb Waters is an interesting name to throw out there. I mean, that's 6 and 7. I mean, it's not like Artie's a good, some sort of magical special teams player. I mean, where's he going to fit in there? I mean, what's his role? What's his outlook?
He'd have to probably be a gunner.
I mean, so at best, we're looking at him as a number 6 corner, and they're not keeping 6 is the absolute max number of corners that they're going to keep, and they only keep 5. So, already just on that alone, he's on the bubble, and now he's got to try to compete his way, even with the 4 or 5 guys he's going to compete with.
Does he make it to training camp?
Yeah, I think he makes it to camp. I think why not? Again, that roster bonus, like I said, I would like to do something with that. I would like to push it back, but I think he'll start in camp. Yeah.
It'd be interesting to follow him because he needs to show that he's a first-round draft pick or close to it.
And for trading him, I don't know what team's going to do that. I mean, I doubt many teams had a first-round grade on him coming out because that's how surprised of a pick it was. And now based on his career arc, I can't see teams being that invested in it. Why? I know it's a 6th-round pick, but give me a 6th-round pick I'm going to have team control for 4 years of, than a guy I'm going to have 1 year of and then probably going to not re-sign after the season.
It's going to be interesting to see his how he handles camp.
Yeah, and I bet you half the teams that had a first-round grade on Artie Burns, when he came out several years ago, they're not even in the league right now. They're not head coaches. They're not GMs anymore, with the turnover in football. So, that might not even be relevant.
All right, Kevin Colbert also defended Bud Dupree and really the team's decision to kind of not get a more – look, they drafted Sutton Smith. And for those of you that continue to think that Sutton Smith's going to be moved to some inside linebacker position, look, he's an outside guy first and foremost. And more than anything, he's a special teams guy. If he can't make this team as a special teamer, you could put him – you call him a quarterback for all I care.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. But there still seems, with the team not addressing the safety position, it still seems that people are ignoring Sutton Smith as being drafted as an outside linebacker, which Kevin Colbert essentially said yesterday he was. Now, he was also talked about Kevin, it was basically like a scene out of out of Office Space. What exactly does Bud do here? What is it that you like about Bud Dupree that other people don't see? He says when we look
it's not the Bobs, it's the Buds.
Yeah, it's the Buds, the two Buds. When we look at Bud and we look at T.J. Watt collectively, those two had as good a seasons as we've had out of the position, Colbert said. And Coach Tomlin made the switch last year and put T.J. mostly on the left and Bud mostly on the right. And then he goes on to name, Cam Hayward, Tuitt, and Javon Hargrave. With those players, we got more pressure last year than we had in recent years, which is true. So I think Bud is a part of that, Colbert said. Can he do more? Does he want to do more? Absolutely. And we think he will. So as I've said, at 9-6-1 last season, we weren't good enough in any one area, but we certainly believe that Bud was a contributor, and he will be a contributor probably even in a more beneficial mode for us this year. So pretty strong words there. Now, as far as Kevin Colbert went on later to kind of draft about or kind of talk about the team not, spending a higher draft pick or what people view as a more, I guess, quality outside linebacker candidate. Colbert goes on to say, but in that position, we also had Ola Adeniyi, who was with us last year, the young free agent we had gotten from Toledo, did some good things in the preseason. He didn't get to play too much last season because he was on reserve injured and activated late in the year. Anthony Chicklow, we wanted to keep in the mix, and then when you get the guy like Sutton Smith, who Sutton was a defensive end at Northern Illinois, but he'll be projected as an outside linebacker for us. So that's how he goes on to kind of explain that and the outside linebacker position there, and then he goes on to later on to defend kind of the height and weight of Sutton Smith, and kind of saying, well, James Harrison was short. Well, I don't think you should be putting James Harrison in the same sentence with Sutton Smith there. But look, I mean, make no mistake about it, Alex. If anything happens to T.J. Watt or Bud Dupree, there's teams. Now look, we're both excited to see what Adeniyi brings this team this offseason, correct?
Oh yeah, definitely.
But we haven't seen. I mean, what do we get? Like 10 snaps out of him during the regular season last year. Now he obviously had a great preseason last year, but I mean that's all we have to go on. But to hear Kevin Colbert talk about Adeniyi throughout, the few times that he's talked about him throughout this offseason, he certainly seems pretty high on him.
Yeah, for as bad as that Chargers game was last year, there's a lot of takeaways this front office had with Marcus Allen and Adeniyi. There's only the games that those guys got defensive snaps, and they're like, those are our guys. We blew a 17-point lead, but those are our guys. No, I'm excited with Adeniyi because he had a really good preseason, and I want to see him take that jump year 1, year 2. I expect big things from him. But with Bud Dupree, obviously it's a little grating, a little frustrating to hear those comments because you're like, yeah, they had 52 sacks, but how impactful was Bud Dupree in the whole scheme of things? You throw me in there. Me, Bud Dupree, and T.J. Watt had a ton of sacks, but I shouldn't be kept. But if you're going to pay that guy $9.2 million, you're going to hitch your wagon to him and say what you got to say to instill that confidence. And again, if Bud can stay healthy, there's been a lot of injuries. This dude's a tough guy. I give him a lot of credit. He's played through a lot of crap in his career, and that's hurt him. So if he could just ever put together a fully healthy 16-game season, you'll get the most accurate evaluation of him, but it hasn't been there yet.
And I think the bad thing for Keon Adams is Kevin Colbert didn't even mention his name yesterday.
Yeah, I mean he's whatever you can get from him. He's not. I don't know if he was ever on scholarship, but if he was, he's certainly not off scholarship. He's certainly off scholarship now.
Definitely going to take a lot for a guy like Keon Adams to make the roster this year. I think it's going to take a look. Brian Allen's a guy that's been a hanger. I view Brian Allen and Keon Adams as hanger-ons, if you will. What has Brian Allen outside of some special teams work? Those two guys are, they're obviously their roster spots are far from safe. Both guys have already spent time on the practice squad, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
And I mean those guys got their work cut out for them. But I mean I understand the consternation, I guess you'd call it, with the fan base when it comes to the outside linebacker position because, like it or not, Sutton Smith is not going to. You'll be in a world of hurt, I think, if Sutton Smith has to play some snaps for you at outside linebacker this year.
Yeah, I mean he's the number 5. I mean it's going to be Watt, Bud, Chick, and Adeniyi are your top 4 guys. And the question is the number 3 spot. Is it going to be Chick? Is it going to be Adeniyi? And I know that Keith Butler made a pass. It's probably going to be Chick, but do you think Adeniyi can push to be that number 3 and rotate in?
I can't honestly answer that question because there's just not enough there. I mean, I could give you I could paint the barn red, for you. Based on what limited that we've seen. I mean, make no mistake about it, his preseason last year was good, but it was also against a few furniture movers on top of it. So I'm anxiously awaiting what you have to say about Adeniyi once the team reports to training camp this year on into preseason. One would think that Adeniyi could be the star of training camp in the preseason this year. He certainly should get enough snaps. I hope they give him a ton of snaps because they really have to find out who he is. We know who Chickalo is at this point, but we don't necessarily know who Adeniyi is. But to hear Kevin Colbert talk, hey, and if they got to find an Adeniyi, God bless them.
Mm-hmm. Hey, but Adeniyi should play well because he played well last preseason. So you think his second year, not being the wide-eyed rookie anymore, he should play as well, if not better. So I'm expecting.
Absolutely, you should. I mean, in fact, I want to see him get a lot of snaps with the starters right out the get-go.
Yeah, put Bud in bubble wrap and put definitely T.J. Watt in bubble wrap. The issue with Adeniyi and the reason why I really want him to be that number 3 is because he's not going to offer you much on special teams. He's not that he's a defense only kind of guy. He's like a late James Harrison where he wasn't playing a whole lot of special teams, and that's going to be the issue with Adeniyi. Is if he's at number 4 and he's not playing much on defense and he's not playing much on special teams, is dude even going to get a helmet? So that's the issue with Adeniyi I have.
Absolutely.
Dave, since you mentioned Sutton Smith, you've watched a lot of him the last 24 hours. Tell us about Sutton Smith and kind of what you're learning about his game.
Yeah, and I'm going back through starting with sack contextualization, and believe it or not, even for Northern Illinois, I have found all of his snaps from last year. And then I'm going to contextualize those for folks today in a post, I think, and then I'm going to work at a later time contextualizing the sacks that he had in 2017. They're about half and half high quality, half effort sacks. And, you're never going to criticize a guy for a sack, but, there are a few of those that scrambling around. In fact, I think one of them was even a 10-second sack. And obviously a lot of these other ones here going up against right tackles from Ohio and Western Michigan, not ideal. The thing that gets me, that jumps off of the tape with Sutton Smith, is he gets a heck of a jump off the football. And one good thing with him is he rushed and he played on his feet quite a bit. So that's not going to be new to him at the NFL level, playing on his feet. Another thing that stuck out with Sutton Smith is he played on both sides. He rushed from both the right and left side. So there's going to be a lot of things when Sutton Smith comes into training camp this year that are not going to be new to him, that you get oftentimes when you get, let's say, a 4-3 defensive end that you're turning into an outside linebacker. He has played on his feet a lot. Now, I don't know how much he's actually was used to drop into coverage. I don't know. Maybe you've been able to identify some of that yet. I haven't looked hard for that just yet. He does get a good push off. He's got some moves too. He's a little guy. I'm going to call him Little Man. And even though he's taller than I am, I'm going to call him Little Man. Little Man has got some pass rushing moves. He's got the old two-hand swipe that he tries to use on these tackles. He even has that kind of, I'm going to call it a mini dip and rip, because he's kind of smaller in nature, but you will see him try to that inside arm, try to get it underneath and wedged up underneath the tackle, and kind of use that as some leverage. Kind of how James Harrison made a career of that. Now, one thing you're not going to see with him is speed to power. Obviously, at 233? 233 and 600. What is he? 6006? 6004, something like that. Little guy, not gonna give you the James Harrison bull rush just yet. But I will tell you this that sticks out with this guy is he's slippery. He's hard for these tackles. These 6'4", 298 to 305, whatever, however big they are. They're hard for them to get their hands on, and if they do get the hands on them, he finds a way to get around them, normally to the outside. Maybe it is because he's so small and he doesn't have a lot of surface area to work with there.
Mm-hmm.
So he finds a way to get himself after the passer there. So I have to give him that. Now, the speed to power obviously isn't there. Anytime he tries to work back inside, via a counter or a twist or a stunt or anything like that, a lot of times you see him get stymied there by the guards, and that's probably not overly surprising. So not that not that much of a guy that's going to be able to counter and work back inside to you. Now that's just as a pass rusher. Now when he plays the run, oftentimes because of his size, he likes to try to attack and then turn his shoulder in, and thus not stay square to the line of scrimmage. In other words, he's trying to hold the wall back with his by putting his shoulder into it, and obviously you cannot have that at the NFL level. It's too easy to turn him completely out of the hole and just really get pushed on and washed out down the line. So that's very discouraging to see, and at his size, it's hard to look. The thing that kept James Harrison not only did James Harrison become a good pass rusher, he became the Incredible Hulk on top of it, and he was able to hold up, squared up, and set the edge against the run. You really don't see Sutton Smith be able to do that on tape, and I'm not sure. We'll see how much muscle and weight he can add. But just looking at him, you kind of wonder. I mean, is he? He looks like a safety out there playing outside linebacker. It really does. A strong safety playing outside linebacker. I'm not convinced that he'll ever grow into that mold. Now, is he a guy that maybe can get after the passer in certain situations? Maybe, because he's so damn quick and elusive. But really, the further that you dig into his tape, past his pass rushing successes, you really are you start to see why he was drafted as late as he was.
So what's your overall takeaway here, Dave? I mean, are you more excited about the pick now that you've dove into his tape some more? Are you less excited? Do you wonder where his ceiling's at? I mean, what's kind of your overarching read on this guy?
He was just a guy that produced numbers at a small school, is the way I view him. Now, this guy, like we said, should be a good special teams player. Look, he moves out in space. Another thing I think that stuck out to me too, he's not a great tackler out in space. He likes to dive at the feet, at the ankles, and he's not. I don't view him as a sure tackler. Now, if he gets you in the backfield, sometimes it squares up on you. That's a different story. But out in space, you see some guys kind of run away from him kind of beat a chihuahua that nips at their ankles and misses at times here. Because of his overall size, look, he should be able to get downfield, and he's going to have to make it as a special teamer. I think we pointed that out earlier in the podcast here as well. But if he doesn't, man, I don't see how you're going to get him on the field. Not this year or anytime soon as a outside linebacker.
Yeah, and that's one concern I have with this entire, really day 3 of the draft class. I'm going to write about it probably for Monday about just what was the ceiling for some of these guys. But do you think, would you categorize him as kind of a low ceiling, high floor kind of guy where you feel like he's going to make an impact at least on special teams and produce solid play there, worst case scenario?
I don't know what would his high floor be. That's what I'm trying to. Define.
Well, you think his floor, the worst he's going to be, is a solid special teams player?
Do I think that's? I think that's.
Worst case scenario.
I kind of think his best case scenario might be now. Look, granted, I'm still barely scratching the surface with this guy, and mostly it's been as a pass rusher so far. And make no mistake about it, he found the quarterback there at Northern Illinois, and I don't care how you do it, and he did so against decent teams, coming out of the conference that he came out against. But to be, you could say, look, Keon Adams found a quarterback as well too. Obviously, not that many times at Western Michigan, but I because of his size, it's just so hard, and then to see him not rush the passer and try to play the run the way he does with that shoulder, and him not having the speed to power. I just think some of these left and right tackles in the NFL are just going to swat him away.
Yeah, and they're going to sit on speed and make him counter inside.
Exactly. They're going to jump out to the edge there and say, little man, you're not beating me to the outside. How quickly can you get back to the inside and beat me to the inside here?
Yeah.
And it's just hard. I mean, and there's a little bit of the bias mixed in with the size, but I mean, I think the tape will match that up as well too. The quickness, I think, is only going to get him so far. Now he's got a little bit, like I said, he's got some moves. He can squat down some of those arms, and you see him a couple times there have try to do that rip under move there. But I just wonder on the big stage now how all that's going to work, because he doesn't have incredible reach at all with those arms. You don't see push pulls. You don't see the bull rushes. I mean, his game is predicated, I think, on beating some of these tackles off the ball into the edge, and that's it.
Colbert's comparison of him and James Harrison has to be it's laughable. I mean, you can't find two different guys and two different styles outside of just overall height and weight. That's the only similarity those guys have right now. You're not looking at James Harrison 2.0 over here.
No, I mean, but Sutton Smith probably a better special teamer than James Harrison was as a rookie. I mean, or when he caught on the first time.
Harrison made some plays early on.
Sure.
Buffalo, 2004, I think he had. Didn't he block a punt? Or I always get it confused. I think he returned. I don't know. But Harrison made some plays early in his career.
Sutton Smith can move out in space. I mean,
yeah.
He definitely has you can see some of those, the 3-cone and the short shuttle out in space with him, but if he's going to be an outside linebacker in the NFL, he's got to have to be more than just beating guys around the end, and he's going to have at some point show those counters back to the inside. He's going to have to show the speed to power, and I don't think he has it in his makeup there.
Well, I know you're going to watch him more. I'm going to certainly watch him a lot more. And maybe
what are your initial? I know I probably watched more of them than you have at this point. But what's your takeaway of them?
Yeah, I took a little bit yesterday off, just kind of unplugged from the draft, so I didn't get the Sutton Smith. I've gotten the Bugs, I've gotten the Gentry, so I'm like, I don't have really much of an opinion outside of just over, obviously the overall size concerns with him and how is he going to hold up? Can he set a physical edge? Is he going to be able to win in multiple ways as a pass rusher? We know he's going to be a special teamer out of the gate. So by the time, his defensive report doesn't even matter too much right now, because probably for the first 2 years of his career, he's going to be strictly a special teams guy. And then, by then we'll see preseason tape and camp tape about him, how he looks as a pass rusher in the NFL. But yeah, I totally share the concerns that you have.
Who would you have rather perhaps taken, would you have taken David Long Jr., who's not an edge, who was taken, 10, 12, 13 spots after Sutton Smith? Would you have gone that route, or did you have you had your fill of inside linebackers at that point? What edge went later that maybe you would have taken where you got Sutton Smith?
Yeah. I'm looking through the list right now to see if there's a name that
what was Watts? Watts was more of a defensive tackle, right? He was more of a defensive end. Yeah, he was a kid out of Arkansas, right?
Yeah, end all the way. I wonder if they would have taken him because he got taken right before they took Bugs. They probably would have still taken Isaiah Bugs, but I really like Armand Watts as a good fit. There really weren't many edge guys taken after. I'm going through the list here. A lot of off-ball linebackers came off the board. Very few.
What about did we mention the kid out of Oklahoma State, Jordan Brelford? But I mean, he was taken. I mean, if you thought you could,
the last,
and Jelks, wasn't Jelks the one out of Oregon, the more lanky, the more
he tested terribly. We ran like 4.92, and his production wasn't strong. There really weren't a lot of. I mean, there was a lot of small school guys. Quentin Bell from Prairie View A&M, Darrell Johnson Jr. from North Carolina A&T, some defensive ends. Yeah, there really weren't a lot of good pass rushers taken after. Jordan Burfict would probably be the only other name worth mentioning, and he was taken next to last.
Do you think Sutton Smith would have went undrafted had the Steelers not taken him?
I don't know. Probably not. I think somebody would have taken him for that production and probably above average athleticism. I don't think he would have fell out of the draft entirely.
All right. I mean, look, we understand them addressing the position, and at that time, unless you're going to go with a guy like Jordan Brelford, maybe he was the guy.
Yeah, well, obviously they had something that compelled them to take Sutton Smith over Brailford, because certainly he would have been on the table and 6th round pick. I don't think anybody would have really batted an eye to where Brailford was selected. But yeah, we'll look more into Smith later.
Oh, I hope this guy proves me 100% wrong as a pass rusher, because score one for the little man if he does. Just what I've seen so far, it's a lot of speed around the edge. And like I said, I'll put this all in a post later today, contextualizing Sutton Smith's all of his 2018 sacks for everybody to see, because obviously those were the highlight. Now, he did have quite a few tackles for losses as well, that those need to kind of be, if able to find them, gone through with a fine-tooth comb. But I think a lot of those, once again, were kind of predicated on either unblocked or speed finding his way into the backfield there.
I know we're going a little long with the show, which is very typical for us. So we're gonna push the AFC North talk probably to Friday's show, and then there was one thing I wanted to mention about Peter King, giving details on the Steelers trade up to 10. We'll save that for Friday, but I do want to talk about another player briefly, Dave, because you did kind of a breakdown of him and his explosive plays. Benny Snell, obviously everyone knows him, really known for his toughness and grinded out capability, but you posted a compilation of his explosive runs and his long runs, and what did you learn from doing that?
Yeah, let me tell you, a lot of them, here's the good thing. A lot of them came against teams in the SEC. So, that's a good thing, because what do we think about when we think about SEC? We think about a lot of speed, and for the most part, some good defense there. So, now, early on in his college career, a few of these were run out of the Wildcat, so he has done that as well too. Another encouraging thing, I think, where a lot of these were run against boxes that included, 7, 8, or men dedicated to being able to play the run. So I think that's another good thing there. A lot of them are between the tackles as well, whether it be power runs or inside zone type of runs. You see that show up on his tape as well. Now, there are a few with him pressing and then bumping it outside. That's another encouraging thing, is that this guy is just not a guy that can get you some explosive runs inside the tackles, but he can get some outside. Now, I wouldn't necessarily call it a drawback, but a lot of these he's not even touched for the first 12, 15 yards. And, of course, we're talking about runs here that are 20 yards or longer, and if he is touched, it's usually a feeble arm attempt, and you're not going to bring this kid down 6 yards past the line of scrimmage with an arm. Okay, It's just not going to happen there. You're going to have to square up with him. Now, as far as long speed goes, yeah, he can get hawked down. But on the flip side, how many do I have here? Like 7 or 8 of his. Let's see. Well, if I can find it here. For starters, 9 of the 29 runs that he had 20 yards or longer resulted in touchdowns. So, if he breaks it, there's a chance he's going to take it to the house. And even one of those, where it was his longest, was 71 yards. But even so, you're not seeing a guy with a explosive speed. He's more of a power runner, and a guy that, you kind of joked, if you need 3 yards, he'll get you 3 yards. If you need 7 yards, he's going to get you 3 yards. That's a little bit over, an extreme there. But
yeah.
And I don't want to make a full comp to Le'Veon Bell here, but I think when you look and you compare their college numbers coming out, there are a lot of similarities here between the two, and even loosely kind of their combine numbers, as well. Obviously, Bell was a little bit taller by a couple of inches than Benny Snell, weighed about, I think, 6 more pounds, had a little bit longer arms. Like I said, this is kind of a loose comparison, but I think when you take the college stats and then you combine them with the combine stats, and then you try to loosely compare the two, you can kind of see it. Now, obviously, the running styles are a little bit different. Snell, in no way, shape, or form, is as patient of a runner, I don't think, coming out of college as, let's say, Bell was. But when you look at their ability to break big plays and 10-yard runs, they're very, very similar in the 20-yard category, and Snell is slightly better of a 10-yard producer than Bell was coming out. Now, obviously, 20-yard runs are not the end-all, do-all with running backs in the NFL draft, because Jacobs, Josh Jacobs, the kid out of Alabama, the first running back taken in this draft, had a lower career 20-plus yard percent runs than Snell did during his career. Now, albeit Jacobs did have a higher percentage of 10-yard runs than Snell, Jacobs had considerably fewer carries during his college career than Benny Snell did. So I think what I came away with Benny Snell and his explosive runs is it's kind of exactly what I kind of thought I was going to find there. A guy that's more of a power runner in between the tackles, a guy that can break you a 20-yard run. But I view James Conner as having more potential as being able to be that guy to break the 20-yard runs, because I think James Conner can do a little bit more damage out in space head-on-head than say, a Benny Snell.
I agree, but one thing going through those clips that you posted, Dave, that I really liked about Benny Snell was his ability to kind of set up safeties and linebackers, even in space. I think it was a run, I believe it was against Florida.
On the outside, right?
On
the left side, right?
Yeah. I think, was that from 2018? You remember? I believe it was.
I think so.
That's when he went for a $175. They beat
Was
Florida.
Was that the one where he kind of tried to hurdle the kid, or was that in the Penn State game?
I don't think it was him trying to hurdle, but it was a safety. He bounced it left, and he just kind of gave a little step, like he was going to press it upfield, and he cut back to the left, and the safety had the angle, then lost the angle, and missed a tackle, and then Snell was finally caught from behind after I think a 50-yard run. But that's what I like. And Colbert alluded to that, talking about Snell, is kind of his ability to create yards at the second level. He's not going to create it with speed, but he's going to create it with some power, and I think just this craftiness to set guys up and to kind of ruin angles from safeties and make them unsure about where Snell's going to go. So I thought that was one of the most impressive elements of what he showed in the open field, was just some of that quickness and burst and footwork, not necessarily long speed to win, but just being able to set guys up and make those quick little subtle changes in direction that'll really screw up a safety's angle and track and path. So, yeah, I mean, Snell's never going to be a burner. He's not Conner. He's probably a Bell-ish type of player in terms of the big play ability that's not always going to quite be there. But his calling card, and the reason why he was drafted wasn't for that. It was for his effort, his leg drive, his power, his toughness. I think they probably see the potential for a well-rounded game with his hands and his pass protection. He wasn't drafted here to bust off 70-yard touchdown runs. He was brought in for his purpose, and what he does very, very well.
He should. Now, here's one thing that stuck out to me when going through his stat sheet, and at some point during this offseason, I'm going to compile this as well too. I saw. I don't know if it's just you see one and you think you see 8 sometimes, but I saw a lot of tackles for loss, and I saw a lot of no gains in there. So,
well, he got the ball a lot. He's got, how many carries does he have?
737 carries during his career there. But he still averaged 5.26 yards per rush, I think. And he also only, I don't want to say only, but I use this to contextualize the yards per run. So, him only having 104 carries of 10 yards or more. What's that? About what's 100? Well, that's 14.1% of his total carries gain 10 yards or more. So that one wouldn't think, and knowing that only 30 of them were 20 yards or longer, that didn't heavily skew, I don't think, his yards per rush. So there were a lot of probably 5 or 6, 7 yard runs in there to go along with it. But it sure seemed to jump out that there were. I guess what I'm getting at is one of the next things I want to see is what was his percentage of carries that resulted in unsuccessful plays or lost yardage, and can we find or compare that to maybe the running backs that were drafted ahead of him?
Yeah, well, when you're facing the SEC, when you're a Kentucky team that I don't think considered to have a great offensive line. I don't know if any of those guys were even like all SEC.
I don't know. I ain't looking up, but there was some good blocking on some of these runs.
Sure. Oh yeah. I'm sure Snell will say it was the best offensive line he ever played behind, but it wasn't running behind Bama, and he was facing Bama, so I can understand why a guy might have a healthy amount of unsuccessful plays. And again, when you're carrying the ball 700 times, you're just naturally going to have. Everyone knew that 26 was getting the ball at Kentucky. Like that was their offense. And so every defensive game plan, every defensive coordinator said, if we stop 26 in white and blue, we're winning this game. If we don't, we're losing it. And so everyone sold out to stop Benny Snell.
The thing that stuck out too, I think, on plays where he does gain the edge and can get outside, he'll look for contact.
Yeah, he's not going out of bounds.
Yeah, he's not going to Franco Harris you.
I'm just going to say that, but I didn't want to slander Franco Harris's good name.
He's not going to just if he thinks he can get that extra yard, he's going to try to get it, I think.
Even if he doesn't think he can get it, he's going to try to get it.
Right.
That's his style.
He looks for contact on the outside.
Yeah, isn't it crazy how clear of a type this team has at running back? I mean, it's just plain as day. 6 foot, a little under, 225 with power. If you're that guy, you're a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Well, put it to you this way: it's not going to, in your annual what the Steelers look for in running backs post. It's him just being out. He's not going to skew the numbers too terribly bad.
No, he's going to, again, I know he didn't make that study, but he missed it by just the smallest amounts. He missed it by a pound in the weight category. He missed it by 100th of a second in the 40 time, and he missed it in the vert by like an inch and a half. So while he's going to miss some of those boxes, I mean, it was just barely. So again, when you go back, you looked at everything that he had, his production, his measurables, his football bloodlines, his character, his energy. It was very easy to connect the dots and say this guy has a real good chance of becoming a Pittsburgh Steeler.
I agree. So there's some, like I said, look on all these guys. We're slowly getting through aspects of their game, and and hopefully in a few more weeks from now we'll be able to give you a full picture of what we think of the player. But I think for anybody to draw a hard and fast conclusion on any of these guys at this point, maybe outside of Bush, I mean we both should have a pretty good idea. Right of who Bush is and isn't at this point. And
you've warmed up to that pick. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole and have a 20-minute conversation, but going back to the debate that we had before the pick, I mean, you've warmed up to it some more.
Here's the thing: the drop off, and I think this was the most probably the only thing worth a damn you did yesterday, Alex.
Wow. Taking shots at Franco Harris, taking shots at me.
You put on the Twitter machine, I think, something to the aspect of how big the drop-off was or where the next off-the-ball linebacker was drafted after Bush went off the board. Where was it, like number 60-something, and who was it?
Yeah, here's the tweet. From the time the Steelers selected Devin Bush at number 10, only one off-ball linebacker was taken in the next 60 picks. That was 43 with the Hawaii kid at Detroit, which surprised a lot of people.
Which was a surprise, right?
Yeah, and I think he would have gone that high. And again, NFL circles seemed to value him. I think the Patriots were looking at him. But the next linebacker, it was Bush at 10, it was Kalani at 43, then Jermaine Pratt went at 72 to the Bengals. So from 10 to 71. It was one linebacker, off-ball linebacker selected.
And I remember, Dan, we had this talk, right, way back, not long after we had thoroughly gone through Devin White's tape, Devin Bush's tape, and Mack Wilson's tape. Once we got through, and really to kind of add frame to it, David Long Jr. too. I think we went through those at that point too. We said, look, the drop off from the top two, talking about Devin White to Devin Bush, was huge.
Yeah, massive.
So if you want to talk about is Dave on board from the aspect of man, this team was set on getting an inside linebacker here, and knowing how big of the drop-off there was, and realistically, a lot of people went into this draft still having Mack Wilson as the number 3 linebacker, right?
Mm-hmm. He went 5th round.
Okay, well, if you firmly believe that, and you see where Mack Wilson went, not that that's the end-all, do-all, but it's where he went. I mean, yeah. I mean, why wouldn't you be on board with it? I mean, and I never said that I didn't doubt the athleticism or the speed or the sideline to sideline ability with Bush throughout this whole process. I was just voicing my main concern of what I felt I lacked from a statistical standpoint with Bush, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Your concern was the box score and the stats, and why wasn't the athleticism and the talent that he showed not always translating to the stat sheet? But do you still harbor that same concern, or do you?
Well, I mean, you draw the comparison to Sims with the Lions from several years ago. I mean, is I think here's another thing that Kevin Colbert, and I know we're running a little bit long here, but another thing Kevin Colbert said during one of his interviews yesterday, I forget who it was with, when having a conversation with the Toledo head coach, is how much of a 20-yard game it's become, and how much of a horizontal game it's become. And look, we knew this going into this year, but it just frames how big of a loss Ryan Shazier was to this team, that they weren't. It really, we'll have to see if they do overcome it with a guy like Devin Bush. But how important speed in the middle of the field is with the defense is, and how that was definitely has been lacking ever since Ryan Shazier went down. The defense has become a totally different defense, if you will. So from the aspect of they had to find some guy, and look, you put the measurables of the two together, it's still not comparable. But if Devin Bush prevents you, and I think this is the kind of the way your argument was, is Devin Bush prevents the 5-yard gain from becoming an 18-yard gain. If Devin Bush turns a 6-yard gain into a 1-yard gain, 1 yard stops don't yet show up in box scores. Unsuccessful plays do not show up in box scores yet. They should. They really should. Official box scores. If you look at from that aspect, from what this kid did, you know what? Who's the defensive coordinator?
Don Brown.
Don Brown said it best.
Great defense coordinator.
Great defense coordinator. He said it best immediately after the draft, and I think in an interview with SiriusXM, he was our human eraser.
Yep. It's a great phrase for it. Do you have the full quote from that?
Yeah, I can get it for you real quick here. And I think, look, was it short-sighted for me? I learned a valuable lesson in evaluating some of these inside linebackers and some of these guys, and I did try, in my defense, so I did try to frame it against a guy like Van Der Esch, last year. Stats are not the end-all, do-all with these guys, especially at the inside linebacker thing. And I think if there's one thing that I've really learned coming out this year, it's that you just cannot look at, especially in a position such as the one that he plays here. I'm trying to find this quote here real quick.
Well, I'll vamp for a second and let you look. I mean, his lack of production was a concern. If I was writing the profile on Devin Bush in the negative column, certainly a lack of production would have been on that list. I don't think it was something that you can discount entirely. To me, it always just came back to was, do you have enough answers, to respond to the question of why didn't he have more production? I think when you look at the plays that he impacted that don't always show up as flashy numbers on the stat sheet, as you mentioned, I think when you look at some of the games he missed with, not playing in the bowl game, with some of the injuries that he suffered leaving in the middle of games, you look at all the talent around him, you look at
they had a damn good defense. There's one thing that really, after watching more and more tape as the offseason went on, and then going back to kind of what we learned and watched when we went our in-depth study of Bush, Michigan had a damn good defense, brother.
Yeah, 2 first-round picks. And Chase Winovich probably stole half of Devin Bush's tackles for loss, because that thing would just fly in and take him from you. Still part of me wishes they would have drafted Chase Winovich, but I'm going a little yinzer there.
Don't feed him. Don't feed him.
I know. Do you have the quote from?
Yes,
from
yes, I do. Don Brown said he was a guest on SiriusXM. Let me tell you, folks, too, I wish we could get SiriusXM as a sponsor, because you guys if you don't have Sirius, you guys don't know what you're missing when it comes to some of these interviews that just don't show up on regular radio, whether it be their college channel or their NFL channel, and moving the chains with Pat Kerwin and Jim Miller.
That sounds like a sponsorship.
It does, and unfortunately, we don't make one damn dime off of. But what we do get is a lot of great content that we can share on SteelersDepot.com. Which, by the way, this interview with Don Brown, I have transcribed most of it up there as well as part of the article. But he was asked to explain. I thought it was a great question. What separates Bush from some of the other football players that he's been around during his long coaching career? And Don Brown says the one thing that he was able to do for for us, he was like a human eraser. So, for example, if someone was going to get into, and this kind of goes back to our wondering how much of a dime package, Alex, that the Steelers might have. Can they get away with maybe using more nickel than dime this year? This is the first thing I kind of thought of here. Brown says, so for example, if someone was going to get into the empty sets and take the running back and put him out as a receiver, and if that guy has pass receiving qualities, there's a certain degree of linebackers that you don't want out there. Vince Williams, maybe Mark Barron, Tyler Matakevich. But with a guy like Devin Bush, you could put him out there on anybody and feel confident that he could handle the task. So he's kind of a human eraser in that respect, that he could go out and cover anybody because, again, kind of like his daddy, he had safety type coverage skills. I thought it was a fantastic quote by Don Brown. And later on he goes, equally on the other side of that coin, if you're going to run the ball in 1st and 10, whether it be inside or in the inside pattern run blocking schemes, Bush, was going to be up to the task because he was the most prepared guy in the building to defend those runs. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, of course, what is the guy's defensive coordinator supposed to say about his player? But the tape backs this up, folks. I mean, this isn't hyperbole here from Don Brown. And if the other teams try to get on the perimeter, he's got the God-given ability, and which he does, God bless him, to run that 4-4 and basically can do things that other linebackers can't do because of his God-given ability to run fast, which is a beautiful thing.
And yes, it is. So yeah, I know it's Don Brown, being in his camp, but Don Brown's a great defensive coordinator, and Bush played in that scheme. And I thought Kohler made the good point too, is that there was so much talent on that Michigan defense. I mean, you got first rounders, future first rounders, so many names to talk about. And Devin Bush was the leader of that defense. He was the leader, and he was the play caller of a great group of men. And that just speaks so highly of his football IQ, his character, the leadership, and the trust that they instilled in him to run that defense.
And that's kind of the last, and he talked about a lot of his defensive players in that interview there, but he kind of closes out. He says, and he's not only a very talented player, but he's got great football. Well, this is Kevin Colbert I'm talking about here. Football character. Obviously, being in a family with a father who was a first-round draft pick and Super Bowl champion, Devin Sr., I'm sure helped. But then to play at the University of Michigan really in a pro-style defense that was very demanding, and I thought it was a very good defense, and not only to play and thrive in it, but also to be the leader of a group of players that there's NFL players on that defense, and obviously 2 were picked in the first round, and for him to be the unquestioned leader, boy, there's that unquestioned leader thing. Kevin Colbert likes to use that in kids and all like that. But he says for him to be the unquestioned leader of that group was very evident to us, and we really valued that. And this goes back once again to kind of a summation of what they did in the first round and kind of what we had said before and after that. If you think he's your guy and you are convinced that he is your guy, then I'm going to have no problem with your conviction to go up and get him. Now, after the fact, if he ends up not being that guy, then at least they tried. At least they identified. Then you look at your scouting department and go from there. But right from the get-go, we had said, well, it looks like Devin Bush is the leader in the clubhouse here. Well, he never left.
Yeah.
He was wire for wire, wire to wire, as they would say, as things turned out there. So say what you will about this pick about Devin Bush, and boy, I'm not sure if I would have given up a second-round pick and whatever, however you want to look at this thing now. Almost a week removed for it. You got to admire the team's conviction to identify the guy that they wanted, that they've said that they needed that kind of player in this defense, and damn it, they went up and they got him.
Well said. And I lied. I said I didn't want to make this a 20-minute conversation, but I made this a 20-minute conversation. But I think it was worth it. I think it's a good conversation to have. So
it's easy to do when you have me on the other end.
I'm putting my hand on the stove here when I say these things.
Rambling Dave. Hopefully it doesn't sound like a ramble.
No, it was a good discussion, and again, hear those quotes from Don Brown. I think it's important information because I don't think a lot of people would have heard that interview on Sirius or been aware of it unless we talked about it. So a couple minutes left in the show, Dave. Let's get to maybe 3 or 4 reader emails, and we'll catch the rest on Friday.
All right, from the email machine, John Caldarelli, becoming a regular email, writes in 2 thoughts on the draft, the day one Let's see. I'm going to go. Let's see. He goes into trade for Bush was prodigious. I love the statement and more. Great pick, and it cost a second-round pick, loss of the high pick, and run on wide receiver and DBs. Probably it cost us a player like Chase Winovich. I feared he looked too much like a Patriot target who grabbed him in the third. That would hurt. But so be it. I'll take it for Devin Bush. I think Alex and I agree there. Number 2, I watched the tape on free agent T.J. Locke, defensive back out of Texas. He reminds me of Darnell Savage. Whoa. Let's not go that far yet. But I mean, obviously I haven't taken a deep dive into T.J. Locke yet either. Great anticipation with powerful read and react skill, tackles with ferocity. I do not know. Do you know his bio? Why wasn't he drafted or invited to the combine? Really want to watch him closely and cheer him on for Steelers' success. That's one thing we got to find out through a deep tape drive at some point, is because of the measurables there. Look, he had go look at one of his interceptions there. Kind of, I don't want to use Troy Polamalu-esque, but the way he contorts his body with the ball and when tip ball in the air. That's the first thing I kind of thought of. And the other thing I kind of thought of, too, when going through, and this is a very limited selection of his tape, folks, so don't say Dave thinks PJ Locke is Ryan Clark. But he kind of comes up and will smack you in the mouth sort of the way Ryan Clark did. Now, his tackling form leaves a lot to be desired. There, I think that sticks out for me as well too. But like I said it early on in the podcast, John, is I'm not going to be surprised if PJ Locke ends up having the highest signing bonus out of the group of 11 here, because it's easy to turn on his highlights and get excited about him, if that makes sense. Alex?
Yeah, I can't tell you why all these guys didn't get drafted. We haven't gotten into the tape of most of these undrafted players yet. I would say that, some of the tackling concerns, the inconsistency. Yeah, he hits hard. He just doesn't always hit his target. He's just going forward. And the lack of production overall, I think 1 year of more than 50 tackles for the Longhorns would probably contribute. And who knows what's going on with the character and medical. Those things can always be underlying issues. Not saying that it is, just saying that that's always a possibility. But yeah, I mean, he looked impressive, so I would say maybe him and for, again, as I mentioned the other day, Fred Johnson, the guard from Florida, would be some UDFAs to keep a close eye on.
All right, Patrick Witt writes in, hey guys, Patrick, like the Saint, but not really. Listening to you guys, I'm way back and forth from work. He's an Army medic combat vet. God bless you, Patrick.
Oh, thank you, Patrick.
Love the show. I watched every draft pick. Can you please explain to me why we didn't grab Winovich before the wide receiver? I was baffled by this. Patrick, let me ask you an honest question here. How much tape did you watch of Winovich before the draft? How much did you get caught up in the hype of Winovich by just us talking about him? And how much did you know about Deontay Johnson out of Toledo ahead of the draft? Could this be a hype thing? Have you given Deontay Johnson's tape a chance here? You know, in all this, look, we both admit, Alex and I, right from the get-go when watching the tape on Devin Bush, that Chase Winovich was the tinsel. But on the top of it, on the flip side too, how much of his production, and I think Don Brown talked about Winovich too. He was more the open end guy on the defense, as opposed to Rashawn Gary being the close-end guy, because Rashawn Gary was overall better player, but be able to be more stout against the run. So against being the open-end player on that defense, was that not going to allow Winovich to make more plays, Alex?
No, absolutely did. But I like Winovich. It was a good player. I mean, it's always impossible to know the answer to that, but I think it just came down to, and I know that Colwood always talks about value and not need, and that's only partially true, but this team needed a receiver, and they had a really high grade on Deontay Johnson. They needed their replacement for Antonio Brown, and they felt like they were more comfortable with the guys they had at pass rusher, with Bud and Watt having those, guys. And now, again, we're not as high on Bud as they are, but they clearly like Bud Dupree a lot, so they consider Dupree and Watt as established starters, and he didn't necessarily have that at receiver with Moncrief coming in and being a new guy, and, certainly not maybe the long-term option. So I think they were just really high on Johnson. They felt like he fit a need. They felt like he was versatile, could help his team in a lot of ways, and wanted to get the receiver, because if they didn't get Johnson at 66, they weren't getting him at all. I think, Daryl Drake confirmed that he was going to go to Tampa at 70 with Bruce Arians. So they wanted to get, the guy that they needed probably more than Winovich.
Yeah, and look, Patrick, give us time to break down Deontay Johnson a little bit more in depth and present him in a very objective view, going over his strengths and weaknesses. And maybe by the time we do that, maybe it'll make a little bit more sense. Maybe it won't. But appreciate the question there. John Fletcher writes in, James P.J. Locke III. What's up, guys? I see a lot of people are excited about the undrafted. This P.J. Locke's causing quite a buzz here. Obviously, the Steelers have had undrafted free agent luck in the past. James Harrison now looking like Finney. His highlights look rather impressive and could be a good dime guy or even replace Sean Davis as contract runs out. Locke seems to at least have more turnover ability than Davis, so I haven't done a film study on him or anything. What are your thoughts? Could there be potential? He seems to pop off the screen more than most undrafted free agents and some of the AAF guys. Let us get into him, John. We've probably seen as much film as you have.
Yeah, and let's be clear, the Steelers have been so starved for talent with undrafted guys the last 2 or 3 years, not beyond that, but recently, the very recent classes have been very underwhelming. So I think we're just trying to find any prospect we can to get excited about because, again, I think the last 2 undrafted classes, I think there's still only like Patrick Morris is the only guy that's still on the team, and maybe somebody else, RJ Prince made it as a tryout guy, but they've been underwhelming. So you're just trying to find someone to get excited about, and you should be excited.
And did you mention Matthew Thomas last year? We were all over the moon about him.
Yeah, Matthew. I mean, you can go through the long list of camp darlings. Go back to Vic Soto from 5-7 years ago, and guys that we liked at the time that don't work out. Howard Jones was another guy to get excited about briefly. So let's get to camp. Let's see what happens.
And before then, you'll do a profile on one of us will do a profile on PJ before we even get to that point.
And all the undrafted guys will profile.
Right. From Joe Barnett writes in, would you have taken Winovich and Boykin with third picks over Johnson and Lane?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I really thought Boykin was going to be the guy. I mean, I talked up Boykin quite a bit, so I think, I would say yes, I would have taken Boykin over Johnson. Doesn't mean that Johnson was a bad pick. They're some pretty different skill sets we're talking about, so I can understand why they went the direction that they did. For me personally, just to give you a straight answer here, I'll say yes, I would have taken Winovich and Boykin over Johnson and Lane.
Yeah, from where we're at right now, but I mean, we haven't, we knew more about Winovich and Boykin than we did Johnson and Lane.
Yeah, well, I knew a good bit about Justin Lane.
I did too, but we're starting to learn more about him as we go deeper into it here.
Yeah. Well, you learn more about any guy that gets taken. But also, I admit that what I would have done or what I think doesn't matter anymore. I'm just focusing on these are the guys that they took. Let's see how they're going to help this team or not.
Right. I mean, I guess if you want to get in the I told you so camp, you can circle those guys to come back to in 3 years, right? But that's the only thing you have to gain here, right?
I'm betting that the Winovich talk and then for maybe frustration or disappointment about losing Winovich is almost as much that he went to the Patriots than it is the Steelers passing on him. If Winovich was a Los Angeles Ram right now, I don't think people would care as much. They just angry, shaking their fist at Belichick that he's wearing a Patriots helmet right now.
Well, I think it makes it worse, but I think they'd still be angry right now.
Yeah, less
and
so.
Look, I mean, and maybe we're partly responsible because we talked a lot about Winovich. We talked a lot about Boykin during the process here.
Yeah, well, it was the guys they showed a ton of interest in, so they like those guys, I'm sure.
Another guy we talked a lot about, Joe asked about, did you have Foster Moreau graded higher than Gentry? Yes. Should Steelers have traded a 6 to move up a few spots to get him? I guess if there's a magic button that I push that just presents that possibly.
Yeah, I mean, I probably would have, but hindsight's 20/20. You're never quite sure how this thing's going to shake out. So who knows? I like Moreau better than Gentry though by quite a bit.
And Joe B is from New Orleans. Joe, I broke a lot of commandments in your city.
All right.
One final one from our buddy Eric. Haven't heard from Eric. Eric Sorensen is a professor at Princeton University. He writes in and talks to us all. Eric's probably one of our older listeners of the podcast. Greetings, Alex and Dave. A recent business trip to China prevented me from seeing the draft, but I had your podcast to keep me informed of all of the moves that our Steelers made, but your podcast is so much more. I've been benefiting from the objective, informative. Some people say we're not objective and informative enough. That's what gets me. And often entertaining coverage of the Steelers by Steelers Depot since 2009. I told you Eric goes all the way way back. I should write you more often. Please do, Eric. But please know that that the work you guys do is first rate in all respects. Thank you, Eric. When I'm on the other side of the planet, your podcast makes me feel as if I'm still at home. Thank heavens for good internet connections in faraway lands. I agree with you there. I'm already looking forward to Alex's reporting at training camp. I think a lot of people are. Nobody does it like Alex Kozora does at training camp. All the best to you both. Eric, always good to hear from you, brother. Thanks for those kind words, and thanks for writing in.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you for putting up with me and Dave. You're a professor from Princeton listening to us.
Holy, it must have, especially with me. We got to be climbing the walls.
Well, and for 10 years. God bless you. That sounds like some Stockholm syndrome almost.
One final one. Jeff Berg writes in, and I know Jeff's been a long-time listener. Night Train, I love that stuff. That was awesome, busting out some Guns N' Roses, Dave. Got a good chuckle out of that. I wonder how many people got that. I know Alex sure as hell didn't. Does it concern you all with the quantity of MAC players drafted by the Steelers while passing on Power 5 talent like Boykin and others? Seems to have chosen some undersized players like Smith and Gilbert to play linebacker, which seems a bit small even for Power 5. Hey, Bush is a little bit undersized. Don't forget that. I mean, if you want to talk about that, 6 foot and under, 240 for both of them. Do you think Grant can put on weight on his frame? He's got longer arms than Smith. I was hoping to get at least one true edge, and once again, we've ended up with more slight of stature edge players. Not ruling them out as valuable pieces to the puzzle, but now it's really important for Ola to bring it. Thank you for your stellar work throughout the draft process, Jeff. Jeff, thank you for the kind words. Jeff, what did you think about our conversation about Sutton Smith? I think we really got into some of those things there with Sutton Smith. So hopefully what we said earlier in the podcast answers a few of those questions there. What's your thought about Grant? Can he put weight on his frame, Alex?
Gilbert, or you said Grant? Is that what we're talking about?
No, wait. He says he has Grant here. I think he was Gilbert. Adding Grant into the conversation because he says he goes from. I guess he's talking about the tackle Grant. Wait.
Gray? I don't know.
Gray.
We got Derwin Gray. We got Ulysses Gilbert III.
I think he went Ulysses Grant on us.
yeah. I figured.
Like Smith and Gilbert to play because he goes from there. He says, "Do you think Grant can?" He must.
I think he means Gilbert because he's got longer arms and Gilbert has longer arms than Sutton Smith.
Okay. I think that's what he means as well.
Well, to answer the first part of the question about the MAC guys, I get it, but I don't think they're intentionally or not intentionally taking MAC guys. They're just taking talented players that happen to play out of the MAC. And as Colbert said, they had 7 MAC guys last year. Look at some of the best players in Steelers history, since 2000, Ben, Harrison, AB, all MAC guys. So you get talent where you can get it, and that's what it comes down to. And yes, the guys they drafted were on the lighter side and the smaller side, but that's a reflection of the times. You need athletes. That speed, athleticism, range, coverage ability is a lot more important than size and run stuffing than it was 15, 20 years ago, and that's just reflecting the evolution of the game. You look at the linebackers that came out this year. How many guys were 245 plus? Not many. And the ones that were, like Trey Lamar from Clemson, were undrafted players. The top 2 guys this year, Devin White, 6 foot, 237. Devin Bush, 5'11", 234, both top 10 picks. You need athleticism. Ed Oliver, weird body type, not a big dude, goes top 10. That's the way that the league is going right now.
All right. Anything else to add, Alex? We got on to say this would be about an hour show, and here we are pushing 2 hours.
Hey, that's what we do.
All right. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow Alex Kozora at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button, upper right navigational bar. If you want an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com for 1 year and for $25, you can have an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com. Go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button in the upper right navigational bar, and until Friday, we'll have plenty more to talk about, we promise you. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.